Hi, Svitlana.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I am also good. I'm a little bit tired. There's a lot to do, but overall, I'm in a very good mood. Suddenly, the weather is getting a bit better here in Germany, in Hamburg, and the sun is shining, and the trees are getting greener. So all of that is very nice because I love to use the bicycle at the moment. So yeah.
Mhm.
But enough
Yeah.
about bicycles and nice weather. Sorry, what did you want to say?
I was gonna say that that's amazing.
It is. You know what else is amazing? That you will give us another lesson about chess. What do you have prepared for us today?
Okay, so let me share my screen.
Absolutely. There we go.
Well, this time, I thought the topic could be the right moment to sacrifice. So
Ooh.
I think sacrifices is really something we encounter in every game, whether it's from our side or from our opponent,
Mhm.
or if it doesn't appear on the board, there was probably at least some possibility of a sacrifice at some point in the game. How often do sacrifices appear in your games, would you say?
Constantly. I think there's hardly any game without a sacrifice. So I'm looking forward to this lesson a lot.
Yeah. I actually had a period in my chess development where I probably either read too many attacking books or seen too many attacking games, and I started sacrificing pretty much every game. I don't know if you're at that point right now.
It seems I'm
Maybe,
stuck with that. Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe you can get me out of
Um,
this.
yeah. Well, for me, it did not really turn out well in most cases. It worked on a club level. Actually, it worked really well on a club level because some people just took my word for it and just believed that my sacrifices were legitimate. But stronger players, of course, didn't buy any of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, but actually, I think now that I think about it, in our rapid interview, you asked me what happened to my rating in 2019, and I'm pretty sure my attacking phase was at the beginning of 2019. So maybe I don't know if that's a coincidence or if it's responsible for the whole drop, but but there's that. But
Yeah, most probably that's the reason. Yeah, because of course, like talking about this, I couldn't ever reach over 2000 because I was very lucky to reach the 2000 in the end, but I could never ever deal with the stronger opponents with my crazy attacking and sacrificing gameplay. So yeah, there's probably a lot of truth about that.
mhm. Yeah, so I think the issue for most people, or for me, and maybe it was for you, is that it's not exactly that you're calculating poorly, but the problem was that you don't really have the intuition of when the right time to do it is. So your sacrifice in itself probably makes sense, but maybe just wasn't the right time in the game for whatever other reasons. So that's what I want to focus on today because I mean, there are plenty of examples of beautiful sacrifices, but the practical skill of knowing when the right timing is during a game, I think that's the one that's more difficult to develop. So
Totally, yeah.
here's here's your first position.
Mhm.
It is black to play, and I'm sure you see a few sacrifices that would work here. And well, my question would be, um, well, first of all, which sacrifices are you considering? And also, who do you think has an advantage here?
I think black has an advantage because I can see beautiful sacrifices all over the place at the moment, and but it from a like a technical point of view, without those sacrifices or without yeah the task, I would say I would rather be white, although the king is very open. I mean that speaks pretty strong language already. But look at this beautiful bishop on c5, for example, and there is a lot of pawns in front of the yeah on the fourth row already. Ah well, I don't know. It probably pretty equal. I would say it's pretty equal, but I can see some sacrificing
Well,
Uh,
does this look like a good moment to sacrifice to you?
I cannot see it working out at the moment because there is too much pieces which can interfere. So I see, so I'm spotting the weak point on c3, which is the knight, and the bishop on g7 pointing towards it. So all it needs to go all in is to open up with the knight on f6. And then when we speak about sacrifices, I can see g and e4 to go in this direction. Every other sacrifice, I don't see anything strong happening when taking the pawn on b4 with the rook. And I think that's all there is for now. But I cannot see. But this is the point, and this is what we're talking about. This is what I'm trying to learn, and maybe you at home too. In a blitz game, I would probably take one of those two beautiful, juicy pawns on e or g4 with the knight, and then I would, keep on with this. I mean, also, I'm seeing also that the queen on the 8 has this nice spot on h4 now with a check, and probably I wouldn't sacrifice. No, I don't think it is the right moment.
Yeah, and you're right that
Okay.
it's not the right moment, but definitely knight g4 looks like one of the candidate moves. So, what was your calculation here on knight g4? Why did you not like it?
So when first of all the queens can be swapped. No, they cannot. They cannot. They cannot.
Yeah, they
I
cannot
I
be swapped
apologize.
that well. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So first of all, the queens cannot get swapped. I think when the pawn takes back on g4, I don't see enough compensation. Either giving a check on h4, then either the queen or the bishop goes in between, and I will take another pawn. I mean, that would be enough to be happy for me. I No, the queen cannot go in between. Damn it. So it
Yeah.
is the bishop which has to go back. Then the queen takes on g4, attacks the bishop on g2. But then I think if probably just castling, if castling is still possible, would solve the trick, or just the
Yeah,
rook on
it
g1.
is.
Yeah.
That's the critical position to evaluate
Hmm.
here, is that you got two pawns, but you were down a pawn to begin with. So now you're only up a pawn for a piece, and it was important to see that castling move at the end because this just brings the white king completely to safety.
Hmm.
Well, maybe not completely, but the king is relatively safe now,
Safe enough, probably. Yeah.
and this is why sacrificing the knight was not working here. Sacrificing the bishop um, is also worth consideration,
Hmm.
but this time the queen trade can work, and well, it's an endgame that it's not black didn't really achieve much because he's down a piece. Maybe there is some compensation, but I really don't think
Hmm.
it's anywhere close to enough. But the main reason why it's not the right time to sacrifice is that black's main advantage is actually the one on the dark squares. It's a very positional type of advantage. So if, for example, black's advantage was in development, he was much ahead in development, and black's king was really really weak, then maybe sacrificing would have been the right choice because it's a temporary advantage, the one that you have to do something about immediately.
Hmm.
But here, actually, the king can be weak for sure, but the main advantage that black has is actually more of a positional one. So
Hmm.
it's on the dark squares, which you didn't directly mention, but I think you can definitely tell that the dark squares are going to be pretty important here.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
So can you think of maybe situations when we shouldn't sacrifice when generally sacrificing is just not a good idea, just hypothetical situations?
I think when, well, sacrificing doesn't make much sense in general when there is not enough attacking pieces towards the king, and then you just have a material loss. Sacrificing doesn't make that much sense if, well, if, yeah, probably if there's no real attack on either winning a piece over time or threatening the king enough. I think that would sum it up.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Also, a few examples are when you have a static advantage that should be enough to win, or that you're happy with your position and you can take it slow and play more positionally. And there is no need to risk a sacrifice. Or also another one, which sometimes people don't remember, is when the opponent has a difficult position regardless, and you don't really see it from the eyes of your opponent. You just see all of these nice sacrifices and you see that you can have an attack, but people often forget to notice that without them, you still have a really nice position, for maybe you have some other type of advantages. And sacrificing is really not necessary, because when you make things murky, you're actually helping your opponent, because that's his only chance of ever complicating the game. So it's actually what your opponent wants.
That's nicely
So,
summed up. Yeah, and this is a mistake I do too often. I think I like to also, yeah, and this is the tempting thing. I mean, everything is pretty much open in this white position, just for example, and you have a better position because of the square advantage, as you just mentioned, which I didn't mention, but it is true. And then instead of just trying to get stronger with this advantage, I'm just like sacrificing because I think, hey, it's better anyway, and now I want to win the beauty prize. Damn it.
yeah, so at this point, it's better not to sacrifice and play knight to d7. So that doesn't allow the queens to trade just yet. And there is one more idea that knight d7 has. You mentioned that the bishop gets opened up, which is what you wanted to do. So there's a calmer way of doing the plan that you mentioned, instead of sacrificing here. So the knight went on d7. There's another purpose to it, which I'm gonna make you find later at this point. So yeah, how would you keep playing this position? So we opened up the diagonal as you wanted, but what's next?
Okay, so the bishop doesn't want to be exchanged, of course, because, yeah, that'll lead into a big trouble. Now my own rook is being attacked, and there might be even a nice move like e5 coming up. No, that doesn't help at all. Actually, the king. No, e5, forget it. I'm just thinking out loud, which is, yeah. Not helping the situation. So what can happen here? This is interesting. You at home, dear viewer, what do you think is a good move for black? Well, of course, let me give a couple of more thoughts. I'm looking over to this nice spot on c4 where my knight could go in 2 moves, but it doesn't help me because just doesn't help. Svitlana, I need your help, please. I'm not sure what
You're
to aim
very
for.
much on the right track. So one thing I'm gonna ask you, how much do you care about your rook on b8?
Not much. That's the thing, of course. So yeah, this is the thing. I'm like, I would be happy to get rid of this super strong bishop and give away my rook for that. Well, that's also considered a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So What about knight to b6? Is this good?
Knight to b6 has the right idea, but knight to e5 is a stronger square for it, because from e5 it can not only go to c4 but also to d3.
Okay. Okay, knight to e5.
So it is knight to e5. That's the move here. And here is another sacrifice that comes up, but I don't even know if I can really call it a legitimate sacrifice, because to me it's just that bishop on d6 has so much value that it's definitely worth a rook. And plus, I think black gets such a strong attack later that there's really more than enough compensation for that material. So yeah, I think the knight to e5 plan is not as difficult to find after you realize that you don't particularly need to pay as much attention to the b8 rook, because it's kind of a reflex for everyone. Though if our piece gets attacked, then you right away start thinking that you have to move it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, at
but
least
yeah,
I didn't consider that much. That I thought about, like, okay, what kind of move can I make instead of pulling away the rook to another spot? Because yeah, I was looking forward to find some better spots. Yeah, interesting. It's nice.
yeah. So the knight on e5 is either going to c4 or to d3. Both of those are good squares. So now the bishop is basically forced to take the rook, because if he takes the knight instead, then we have a beautiful bishop pair. And again, I think positionally this should be winning. Maybe it's not as obvious to evaluate it from here, but if the game would go on, I'm sure that black would win 9 out of 10 times.
Well, we had already 2 courses with you before, so and there it was all about how to win a position which is actually a 1 position, and yeah, this is the way to aim for. Now with that we have that knowledge, this should work.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not that easy to win a winning position, but yes, this one you have to trust me that it is winning. So bishop took a rook, and now we could capture it back, and I'm pretty sure that would give very very good compensation regardless. Queen capturing on b8 I think is also a very viable solution, but queen to h4 is more forcing at the time, because now that we've made a sacrifice we can't really wait around, and we have to start doing something on the king side. So queen on f2 is not an option, unfortunately, for white, because of knight to d3, which actually wouldn't be possible if the knight had been on b6. So that's why the knight on e5 was important. But instead, king to f1. So now another check is coming up, and white pretty much has a choice of either covering up with a knight or playing king g1. King g1, I think it didn't happen in the game, but it leads to quite a complicated position on both sides. But I think black should win. But instead, the variation that was proposed either by the player who played this game or by a commentator was rook d8, but it actually ends up not winning, which it looks like a very typical move that you would play, right? So, and maybe that's a bit on not winning positions too, because the position was completely winning, but something like rook d8 can completely ruin it, and black would actually have to go for a draw after something like this with a perpetual. There's a really complicated perpetual. I think actually goes in queen h6 at some point, maybe bishop d4, and then complicated queen h6 moves. But anyways, queen g5, something like that, which is crazy, and obviously nobody wants to go for that when you just had this position 3 moves ago. So we're going to look at knight e2 because that is what happened in the game. So now it already looks like you have a really strong attack as black, but it is still not over. And keep in mind that you still made that rook sacrifice on b8, so it's time to capture at least the bishop back. And I'm gonna ask you to find basically the continuation, or maybe not the continuation, but the plan of how you would continue the attack after, let's say, queen to e1.
All right, let's take a look at that. So, okay, now I can see if I take... So, first of all, my thoughts are that the king is in a bad situation. The knight is pinned, which is nice. And the king is in a bad situation because it just doesn't have that many spots to go to. So, I'm thinking of beautiful knight moves which give a check and give the king no space anymore. But for now it's not working like I planned. Oh, I see something, I think. Is it the rook takes b4?
I don't think it is. I'm fairly sure that white can either take it or maybe just
I thought I think white can just take the queen and then there's not enough compensation.
Here that's the thing. I think sometimes when you're in an attack, you're very tempted to sacrifice something. And also, every time I'm asking you a question doesn't mean that it's a tactic happening right now. And
yes,
that's part of the process here. Is just as if this was your game, how you would play. It's not every move has to be a beautiful beauty prize winning sacrifice, even when you're attacking.
Yes, you're right, and it's good you remind me. So
one day I'm sure you're gonna win the beauty prize, as you've been attempting for so long already.
For me. So okay, now since I have this nice attack and this bad king situation, I think I would just move my queen to d8.
And what is the queen doing on d8?
On d8, it can either go to b6 or has this beautiful d line at the moment and can do more damage. Yeah, that's my initial thought. Now I'm not winning the beauty prize. I actually am losing the game, probably like that.
I don't think you would be losing the game if after you play queen d8, but you probably wouldn't be winning it as quickly, because on d8 I don't really see much things that the queen is going to do. Even if it comes to b6, you're not threatening anything immediately. And the d file, although it is a beautiful open file, you would rather have your queen probably somewhere closer to the king, such as queen on f6. So here at least you're attacking f3, but even it's not even about queen f6, but the plan that comes after. So remember, it's all about the dark squares here, and you sacrificed in exchange for it. And so you're going to try to attack those dark squares with, for example, the knight coming to f4 is the plan. And it's working here because of this time I'm going to make you find finally the tactic. What happens if queen on... What happens if... well, this one is probably not too complex. What happens if queen takes on f4?
Well, I still can take the queen back and checkmate, because
you can take the knight. What happens if the knight if the knight takes on f4?
If the knight takes, I will also take the knight with the queen, and then the bishop goes to d4 if the queen takes back.
Yes, that's good. I'm pretty sure that would work. There's even rook b4, so there are many ways
Oh,
to win
okay.
the beauty prize here. You can choose whichever one you like. I think queen bishop no rook on b4 is better because on queen f4
Oh,
you don't actually white doesn't have to take yet, and he's still up an exchange. I'm pretty sure enough compensation, but rook to b4 I think would be the one.
damn. That's yeah, yeah. You only see the beautiful things. At least I. That's and again,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have worked that well. Yes, yes. Rook b4 is much nicer, obviously.
Yeah, do you see the what would follow up after rook takes b4?
As far as I can see, it would be queen to a1 with a check,
Yeah, queen to a1,
and
king
then
here, and
yeah,
mate.
and that is yeah, it's just simply mate, checkmate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if rook to d1, then again you have your opportunity to win the beauty prize with queen to d4, a
Oh yes, and now the rook
Sicilian
goes down.
sacrifice.
Hmm.
And yeah, this would be winning. But still, this did not happen in the game. But I wanted to highlight the plan
Thank you.
that you would do in this position. Even looking immediately at a position like this, the first thing that should jump out to you is the dark squares,
Hmm.
and then you start working around that and seeing what plans would work out. So knight going to d3, potentially going to f4 later. Then you also put your bishop into action by bringing it on the dark squares.
Hmm.
And basically, the game is already close to being over, although the material is not in black's favor.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, rook to
some,
d8 it is. Oh, it's
yeah,
still there on this stupid line. Gosh.
exactly. But finally, c5 makes it
That
get out of it, and this is done. Um, discovered check, and yeah, the end is not particularly as interesting because there's no sacrifices going on, but I wanted to highlight the basically the beginning position and a few other points in this game where it seems like a sacrifice should be the way to go, but really there's other advantages that you can focus on, positional advantages
hmm.
that are a lot safer and even a lot better in this case. So that was the first one. I have one
You have
more.
one more. Oh, cool. That is awesome. Yes. I thought that was it, but I'm happy you have another one. Okay.
I have another one, which maybe will be a bit more typical opening, like in terms of openings.
Okay.
Do you play the Sicilian?
Only as white.
Hmm. Well, you're lucky here because you're gonna be playing white.
So,
But yeah, the Sicilian is really known to be the opening where sacrifices happen all the time,
huh.
and something where it's very common to see sacrifices. Do you happen to know any common Sicilian sacrifices? Let's say as white.
No, none. I am also only playing. I mean, I'm playing the wing gambit, so I'm already the one who's giving the first pawn.
I actually
And
have no idea what's the wing gambit.
oh, it's with b4 after
Oh,
c5,
oh, right
and
away.
yeah,
Okay.
right away. Yeah. So yes, I kind of know what sacrifices I want to play when I'm playing the openings, but as a Sicilian,
You're
like
just avoiding mainstream theory as much as you can on move two.
exactly. I want to be as far away from the mainstream as possible often. Anyway, also in life. But yeah, so I'm not sure what kind of sacrifices are awaiting me in a like in real Sicilian game. Shame on me.
I think this is pretty much a very typical Sicilian position
Hmm.
because it involves, I think, two of the mm, most common sacrifices that you would make in the Sicilian as white. So actually, I have to put the first two moves in.
Okay.
So on at this point, Basically, what do you think? What would you play as white? What would your plan
Hmm.
be?
Okay, so then again, I'm looking over to the uh, F file on the black side, which is tempting for me. I think I would try to push forward the F pawn to open up the pawn structure a bit for
Hmm.
against black. Then again, of course, E5. Yeah. I think I could be fine with that. Yeah, F5 is an idea to open up the pawn structure a bit more.
Okay. Well, I think if you had been playing the Sicilian as white, like the main lines of the Sicilian as white, you would already feel that usually it's the E5 plan that we go for instead
Oops.
of F5. But no, it's okay. You still mentioned E5, so it's still something you would consider,
Mhm.
and that would be the more correct way to go. Usually, the
Okay.
reason why F5 is not what you would want to play as white, it's usually very, very tempting, but it doesn't always happen, especially in this pawn structure. You would rather play E5 because the one thing with f5 is that it opens up the e5 square, and sometimes if the knight, let's say, is already on d7, which in a lot of Sicilian games it is,
Mhm.
you're giving up that e5 square forever, and that's like the top way that you can lose your whole advantage as white, is if you
Oh,
give up that e5 square to the knight.
okay.
Right now, the knight can't reach there immediately, but but usually that's why we don't play f5 in those types of positions. Maybe black can play e5 himself, although I don't think that would be ideal here. But usually the reason why f5 is not working is because you're giving up the e5 square,
Hmm.
and there's going to be something going on the dark squares.
Hmm.
So also black's plan is probably to play knight c4 next, and then you can forever say bye bye to e5, and you'll probably never be able to play it again.
Mm.
So that's why right now is the right time to play e5.
Okay.
So um, it's not exactly a sacrifice. This one isn't a sacrifice, but we have some of them coming up. So the reason why this isn't exactly a sacrifice is if you think about what happens if black takes. Um, can you see why taking is not that great for
Trying
black?
trying to see. There must be something.
It's
Something.
not complicated at all.
Not complicated at all. Oh, okay.
No.
Uh, uh, I guess I will just play the rook to e1, maybe.
That would be a normal move,
Yeah,
but
it's not normal enough. Okay. Oh
not
yeah,
even
I
about it.
you're hovering over the bishop on g2 already, and now I can see it. Oh, it is b7 falling. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. B7 falling, and even more things falling after knight c6. So
Oh.
so pawn to e5 is not even a sacrifice,
Hmm.
but usually it is the plan that white goes for in those Sicilian positions,
Okay.
and it is a typical sacrifice. Sometimes you give up the pawn to open up the e file and to get your rook there, and usually in Sicilian it's whoever gets the attack first, right? So if
Mm.
if you miss your moment as white, then black is going to have his ideas, which is knight c4. There's oftentimes rook c3 sacrifices, not in this particular line, but there's often rook c3 sacrifices. Those are just some typical things that
Yeah, and
black,
it's
black has.
it's good you're pointing this out because it's it happens in many Sicilian positions, and then e5 is something to keep in mind just for the future, especially for
Mhm.
all you Sicilian players out there. But you know that already, probably. Who knows?
So black is basically cannot take and has to play this ugly looking move, knight to h7, but the
Hmm.
knight didn't really have better squares, and now is your time to shine, to find a sacrifice, which you would You would definitely know if you had been playing the Sicilian, but it's good that you don't because you're gonna have to find it on your own. But it's a very typical Sicilian sacrifice. I'm sure you've seen it before, but maybe because you don't play the Sicilian, it'll be harder for you to spot it. But it is white to play. Try to find the sacrifice.
Okay, so do you at home know exactly what Svitlana is talking about already? Are you a Sicilian player or playing against a Sicilian? Do you know what move is on the board to make? So, I am not a Sicilian player, as I mentioned already, so I don't know the typical idea. So I'm very happy that we're talking about those typical ideas. And while I'm talking, I'm trying to find the move to save a little bit time and not embarrass myself too much. But I mean, I cannot see that it is knight takes e6. There's just too much going on. An idea, but that can also not work, is knight to f5. But then there's there's this tempting knight on b6, which might be vulnerable at one point.
Your knight to f5 is already closer. That's one of the typical Sicilian sacrifice ideas, and there's a second one that comes kind of hand in hand with the knight f5.
So why is knight f5? Would knight f5 be a good move? No.
No, not right now,
okay.
But I'm saying that the idea is usually is related to knight f5.
I get it. Okay. Whew. So what could that be?
About the two squares. So the f5 squares sometimes weaken the Sicilian, and there's one more square.
I'm afraid I cannot shine today. Svitlana, please help me out here.
Okay, so
I thought I was good at that.
No, it's okay. You found the first. You found it in the first one. Here, I think it was not considerate of me to pick something with the Sicilian because I didn't realize you didn't play it.
Okay.
But so the main sacrifice ideas in the Sicilian as white are the knight going to d5 and the knight going to f5. So it's either one or the other. Usually knight goes to d5 first, which then if black recaptures, then your f5 square opens up and then the knight goes to f5. So that's the main typical ideas of the Sicilian. It's not for that same reason here, because at this point the f5 square would still not be available. But if you look at pretty much any like big players like Kasparov, they were all making these knight d5 moves, knight f5. Those are usually the two key weak squares that white would take advantage of. So the move is going to be knight d5 later. I wanted you to find rook f1 first.
I thought about this.
And then, did you think of knight d5 happening at any point?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I thought it would be harder to find it for a non-Sicilian player, but yeah. So knight d5 is really strong here, and usually we make it to either open up the e file or to open up the f5 square for our second knight to go. And there are better examples if we were looking at that particular sacrifice. There are plenty of games where they end up in really nice attacks. But knight d5 is the main idea. But even if rook f1 had been on the board, I think it would still be hard to find if you just don't know this idea in the first place. But now, if you ever begin to play the main lines of the Sicilian, you'll know to always look for knight d5 and knight f5.
Okay, so now what is happening now? You have to solve this riddle. So knight is going to d5, and now e takes d5, and I will take back with the bishop, I assume.
Yeah, you take back with the bishop, and
I'm attacking f7 and of course c4.
And on e5, probably not possible to take because of some bishop f4, and it's just, or maybe even bishop
Oh,
f7. There's
yes.
plenty of things.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
Black will probably have to give up on f7,
Okay.
and after that, that would be a really strong attack.
Beautiful. Yeah, it all falls
I
apart.
think this one you would be able to bring till the end. So that's why usually those knight d5 sacrifices are really effective. Like I'm saying, there's no knight f5 here, but very, very often it would be followed by knight f5. Or
Okay.
also e6 is sometimes an idea where you open up the e file and the f file and everything around the king.
Okay, okay.
So usually knight f5 works when the king is already castled, because that's where the f5 square starts being important, because it's targeting g7. But I know it's kind of hard to catch when I'm not giving you a specific example and it's just a theoretical position. But all I want you to remember is knight d5 and knight f5 are always things to look for. So now
Okay.
that the queen went back to c8, can you try to establish black's main weakness and what you would play? I'm gonna give you a hint that there's no sacrifice coming after this, but just basically a plan. What is black's main weakness?
Clearly f7.
And
Isn't
how would
it?
you?
It is. It has to be.
Yes, it is. It is f7.
Exactly. So now I would just use my queen to put enough pressure on f7. The question is f2 or f3? And I will decide to go for f3. Or does it make sense?
F2 was better.
F2 is better.
F2
Damn
was
it.
better. F3.
Because I'm blocking my own bishop on f3.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not a huge mistake, but yeah, f2 is better. So now the point is, if they take the knight, then of course you have your queen invading onto f7 and then taking on d5. And again, this type of position, I'm sure, is something that you would love to play as white.
Indeed.
And there would be mate following up soon. Now black will try to play f5 and kind of block everything, but you can keep trying to open everything up, and at some point black will have to take the knight on d5 before it starts taking black's pieces. And basically a position like this in the Sicilian would be a dream, because like I said, whoever starts the attack first in the Sicilian will basically win the game.
Whoa.
So you always have to aim at being the first one. Well, after bishop d6, again, these are not about sacrifices anymore, but you can try to find the winning line here.
Okay, so I would go for bishop take h6 to make space for the rook on the e file. That would be
it's not the most forcing.
Okay.
I'm sure bishop h6 would probably be fine too. Like, I don't see a way that white could ever lose this position unless he makes a lot of slow moves. But there is something more forcing.
Okay, so what about if I give a check? Then the king has to move to d8. Is that the only spot, or e7? You might escape. He might escape.
The check. No, the check is right. He can't escape if he's in the middle of the board. King to d8, right?
Oh, now I think... No, it cannot be. Or can it? What's happening now? Oh, there's so many things going on. My gosh. Yeah. So I see, for example, knight check on e6.
Right.
and then I will see the bishop on b6 check.
Bishop on b6, I think,
Not
is
working.
not it.
Damn it.
No.
Okay, so maybe I will just take back on e6 then. With the
If you
bishop.
take back on e6, they will capture. Oh no, it gave you the line. It gave you the winning line, but it's then queen would capture back, and it becomes harder for you to continue the attack.
Okay, so yeah, but then I mean, the idea is to get the bishop out of the way, so the rook has a beautiful open D line, or as open as possible. So yeah, I saw the line. Honestly, I'm sorry. I was cheating by looking at it, and I think I would have taken me a bit longer to find it. But then again, it makes sense. If the
Yeah,
knight
I think it
is
makes sense
gone,
once you get to this position, it makes sense, but it's harder to see it from afar.
yeah. Well, once the knight is gone, then I have the chance to bring more power to b6 in the end, I guess. Oh, it's
Yeah.
all falling apart. It's beautiful for white. Yes, maybe I should consider playing the Sicilian more often.
You definitely should. It's a great opening as both white and black.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have such attacking positions as I'm saying, as both colors. And so if you're a tactical player and if you like sacrifices, then I think the Sicilian would be the right opening for you.
Yeah, massive. So, yeah. Okay, that is great stuff. That is very interesting indeed. Yeah, you can unshare the screen. I will just ask you a last question before we end this very nice lesson. First of all, can you summarize up what you have taught us today, just like in a kind of in a nutshell? What are the things to take care of, the 2 to 3 main lines? Also, apart from the Sicilian, for how to sacrifice in the best way possible.
Yeah, I think the main concepts here were that to know when it is the right time to sacrifice, you have to first of all look at the type of advantage that you have. So if your advantage is temporary and you see that if you lose this moment and if sacrificing is the only option to keep your attack going, then sacrificing is the right solution here and it is the right moment to do it. But if on the other hand you see that you have other less temporary, if you have other permanent advantages, like you have a bishop pair or you have a better pawn structure, so those types of advantages, then maybe sacrificing would not be the best decision because you're putting yourself at too much risk. But of course, this is not applicable to the situations where you made your calculations and you're winning in the end and you're winning back more material. Then of course the sacrificing would be right. But it's about the situations where you can't see it till the end, or maybe you don't have the time to calculate it till the end. And you would have to rely more on your intuition. So asking yourself simple questions like, what type of advantage do I have? And taking psychological factors into consideration too, like your opponent being in time pressure and maybe your opponent being in a tough position, and sacrificing would make it more complicated for both of you. Whereas if you refrain from sacrificing, it would only remain complicated for the opponent. So that would be another factor to take into consideration. But at the end of the day, you have to practice your tactics so that you can be confident in the sacrifices that you make, but also try to develop your intuition so that you intuitively know when the right timing for a sacrifice is.
Awesome sauce. Yeah, very nice summarization. Yeah. Okay, and one last question. What advice can you give to people like myself who just want to sacrifice because one of the main points is why I like chess so much is that it is it's this creative, it has this creative element. I like those weird, completely strange and positions which are so far away from the normal positions because sometimes they just bore me. What kind of advice can you give to me? Should I just go for to improve the chess? Probably get away from this a little bit and go into getting a positional advantage, or would you say like, hey, whatever makes fun for you, or whatever is good for you at one point, you'll do it? It's a very difficult question. I'm not even sure if I can answer it myself.
No, I completely understand you. I mean, for all of us, chess is we play chess for fun, to have good to have good games, to have fun, to have nice sacrifices, nice attacks.
Mhm.
So I completely understand the feeling, and as I told you, I've been there, and I've had a period in my chess career where I really liked sacrificing, and I would do it in almost every game. But I think what I realized is the really the what changed it for me was I read some books and watched some games on more on the positional side, and I realized how beautiful that can be as well. And I think that was really what motivated me. And honestly, I started getting better results when I stopped sacrificing. So that's what motivated me. But of course, not in every game, not always, and it all, of course, depends. But I completely understand your desire to make it complicated, to make every game interesting. But I think if you if you take a look at some of the more positional openings, some of the more positional players, you can realize how beautiful some positional ideas are, and that will motivate you to maybe sometimes play positional chess more. But I think everyone has a different style. So if sacrifices is something you really like, then and you're good at it, and that's what makes chess fun for you, then of course I don't think it's something that you should stop yourself from doing. But my advice would probably be to take a look at some of the more positional players, like for example Karpov, and realize how beautiful some positional ideas can be as well.
Beautiful. I like that a lot. That's a very, very good advice. And yes, I think I will do both because I think it absolutely makes sense what you just said. I will look into the positional things like Karpov. Yeah, he's like I mean, he's a grandmaster anyway, but he is. People consider Karpov to be the positional player. Is that right? Can I? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there must be some beauty in this too, for sure. And I think it's very, very good to open your horizon in any way, which is not what I have done in a long, long chess time. And on the other hand, I will always be the person who wants to sacrifice. So I just should get better in this. And with your help, I think I'm on a very good way. Yeah, Svitlana, thank you so much for this lesson. I hope you at home had as much fun as I had and learned something too. And we will see each other next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.